Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Welcome back to the Fort Worth 148 podcast. My name is Billy Hamilton. I'm Worshipful Master for Fort Worth 148.
I'm Gabe Jagush, and I am Senior Warden of Fort Worth Lodge 148. And we have a special guest today.
I'm Justin Duty. I'm a past master of M. Denton Stanford Lodge number 594 in Lorena, Texas. And I'm currently the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Texas.
Excellent. Welcome. And we work out almost every day. So it's kind of like, hey, I just saw you. So.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, for the listeners that don't know, Billy is the general manager of the Grand Lodge Library and Museum down in Waco, Texas. And so he and Justin have their offices, about a stone's throw apart.
And boy, do we throw those stones.
Yes. Billy takes care of part of the job that I really had no interest in doing. So I'm just glad you're there.
There we go. Makes your life a little bit easier.
A lot easier.
Less suffering, let's just say. So, folks, this is going to be a Fraternal Spotlight episode. So it's going to be based around Justin and who he is and what he does for the Grand Lodge. But before that, we'll have discussion questions. Billy, you found this one. You want to lead us into it?
Absolutely. And just remember, this is not necessarily a reflection of us. These are discussion questions we find online and thought it would be an interesting topic for discussion. So this one is from a user, Hierophant Talk, from the Freemasonry subreddit. And it's on progressive lines. And he says, this is an unpopular opinion, I suspect. Progressive lines are a bad idea. I realize that lodges use them to have a good idea of what and who is coming down the pike, as well as for planning and succession purposes. But in my view, they are the worst of participation trophy culture. Not everyone is cut out to be an officer. Not everyone who's cut out to be in a given chair is cut out to be in another. And sometimes it would be better to have the same person serve as worshipful master 2 or 3 years, then promote the next guy. At the end of the day, running a lodge is a constrained optimization problem. And if we can do away with one of the constraints, must have guys go through the chairs, we'll have better run lodges. So thoughts on this?
Justin, do you want to go first on your thoughts with this? Billy and I usually monopolize too much time as hosts.
Defer to the new guy. No, I agree with that. I've seen that in play in lodges that I've visited and lodges that I belong to, where a guy gets in at the bottom of the line, wherever that is. Maybe he started as a steward, maybe he came in as a senior deacon, and I think it's lazy is not the right word, but the lodge just looks at it and goes, well, he's put in his time. We might as well just let him go one more year. And I've seen it happen in my lodge where we did that 2 years in a row. We gave him some goals. We said, we'd like this, this, and this. We want you to be successful. And he accomplished those things. And still, it was not a very productive year. But I agree with some of those sentiments. There are guys that are cut out for it. There are guys that aren't. And I think we need to be a little more selective and not just continuing for the sake of continuing them.
Yep. And I personally thought this was a kind of a funny post because it having been posted to the Masonic subreddit, he says, unpopular opinion, I suspect. And he ended up getting kind of pushed back on in the comments because while in Freemasonry, as a broader culture, progressive lines are still very popular, with guys that are, let's say, more online, progressive lines are less popular. So he was kind of preaching to the crowd there a bit. But, there's a lot of merit to saying, hey, listen, we need to not think of this as an automatic gimme. Billy, I think you call it the Masonic escalator a lot of times, It's like, hey, there's the second floor of the mall and we're headed right there, It doesn't need to be that way. Although, Billy, I'll give your opinion first, and then I want to ask a follow-up question on this very same subject.
Sure. So yeah, I do talk about the Masonic escalators, but so here's the thing about the Masonic escalators, right? Is a lot of times we feel, oh, someone's elected to the bottom of the line, and nothing that can happen, unless like a meteor strikes the planet and all humanity is wiped out, they're going to progress to the very top of the line, period. No matter how they perform along the way, no matter whether they have the capabilities for that. Now, I'm not saying anything's necessarily good or bad with that if there are things in place. I think one of the biggest places we fall down in all of Masonry is a mentorship program, right? Officers should have a mentorship program. And if you're an elected officer, you should have a past master who's been there, kind of say, okay, let me help you get prepared for what you can expect to encounter in your years. I think that's where we fall down. Some lodges have a hard time just mentoring new members, but officers, I think, need that mentorship just as much, if not more, because they're the ones who are going to be making the decisions that are going to impact the future of your lodge or whatever body, we're talking about. I think that should go across the board. It's not, you're elected, congratulations, now figure it out. It should be, hey, you're elected, so let's talk about what you can expect.
So you've kind of touched on some of this, right? The follow-up question that I had was, what are the biggest advantages of progressive lines, right? If we're talking an ideal situation, right, where we're not just, rocketing schmucks to the moon, what are those advantages that we can see from a well-run progressive line?
From a well-run line, I mean, it's predictability.
Mm-hmm.
It gives the guy in the line, assuming all things being equal, that he's competent, qualified, and the lodge is on board with it. It gives him that model which to follow. I'm here this year. I know I'm going to be here next year. If the lodge is well organized, he knows that maybe the junior warden year he's supposed to start planning this, and the senior warden year he's supposed to start planning this. So it gives you predictability, assuming that, like I said, the lodge is on board, he's qualified, all things being equal.
So I think also, in a way, it could, if it's used properly, it could be a way to make sure that the worshipful master is the most qualified ritualist in the group too. Because how many, I'm not tearing anybody down, but how many times do you see where someone is the head of a body and they do not know how to open or close that body in a way that they would have if they had someone kind of stepping them along. So I think ritually we could also improve if we had a progressive line where, once again, we had that mentorship, and it's like, okay, here you go. And theoretically, by the time you reach the end of the line, you should be able to do all parts, or at least all key parts. So that's definitely a benefit if it's done in a positive and productive way.
Yeah, I've been to a lodge where it's a rural community, we'll just say that. And we were there visiting, and it was the younger man was master, and he was very eager, very enthusiastic. He had been master twice. He was on his second year. I asked him when he joined. He said, "I've been a member 3 years." So,
oh, that's rough,
man.
So part of that going through the line is not only to serve your time, but to determine and figure out how the lodge runs.
Mm-hmm.
I never really got to ask him those detailed questions, but I couldn't imagine taking a guy that's just turned his proficiency and then saying, "Hey, here's the keys. Why don't you take care of this for a while?"
Yeah.
Right.
And
boggles
to
the
be
mind.
fair, like it could be that, this guy was just that qualified, right? Like, but I'll wager that 9 times out of 10, that's not the case.
Yeah, it's a lodge with a lack of participation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a guy with a pulse. It's their first new candidate in a while, and let's get him involved. And I never followed up. This was years ago when I visited. I've always wondered if he's still around, still active.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would be concerned about the longevity of his enthusiasm for masonry in general. That's just one of those things. Like, yes, that's very cool that you're getting a lot of opportunities very quickly, but also, like, long term, let's talk about what that's going to do
Yeah.
to your appreciation for the craft and how that's going to wear you down.
Yeah, that could be an express lane to Burnout City.
Oh
Oof,
yeah.
that's pretty ugly. So let's talk about some personal questions. Justin, can you tell us about yourself outside of the Masonic lens?
Yeah. So I'm a lifelong resident of McLennan County, which is the greater Waco metropolitan area. I don't say that in a joking manner at all. I actually live in Lorena, which is about 15 minutes south of Waco. I'm in the restaurant business. I got born into it. We own 3 pizza joints here in Waco, so it gives me the ability to come down here and work with Billy. I've got a good crew that runs the stores while I'm away. I'm married, my wife Neely, and we have 3 children. We live out in the country in Lorena.
Very cool. So when did you join Masonry, and how old were you when you joined?
So 2004, and I asked for the petition on my 21st birthday.
Nice.
I was we had a little birthday function, and my grandfather was there, who was a member, and my father was there, was a member, but Dad was an old school guy and never talked about it. I would see in his office the Scottish Rite patent on the wall, and his shrine stuff and Blue Lodge certificates. He still has his Master Mason certificate from '74 framed and hanging on the wall. So I always remember those things, but never the topic never came up. And my grandfather was there, and I said, "Hey, what's the deal with that belt buckle?" And he said, "I'll get you fixed up. Don't worry." And he showed up the next day with the petition, and that's how it started.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
So are you
Yeah.
third generation, or does it go back further than that?
So I'm the third contiguous generation. We do have some back even prior to the Civil War, but grandfather, father, and myself.
Are they the ones who inspired you to join?
Yeah, and when I asked him about the belt buckle, I was, he's obviously wearing a square and compass belt buckle, had the hat on all the time, and I've thought about it, and I've gone back over the years and thought about it. I didn't even know what the fraternity was. I just knew that Frank, grandfather, was a member, and my dad was a member. And then I've thought about it at length, and what I had seen in those men, I wanted some part of it. And so that was really enough to get me over the threshold to ask that first question.
All right. So when you joined, did you join their lodge?
Yeah. So actually, my dad belongs to a lodge in Waco. Since my grandfather gave me the petition, I petitioned his lodge, which is in Lorena. That's the reason I live in Lorena today, to be perfectly honest with you. I had a little bachelor pad in Waco, about 2 blocks from the Grand Lodge, and lived there for many years. Are you calculating exactly where it is?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where it would be.
Yeah, but I still have it. It's a rental property. I'll take you over there one day. And needed to, when was going to get married, we were going to have kiddos, do the whole 9 yards, and we wanted to move somewhere out of town. And I'd already been a member of the lodge for 5 or 6 years and knew everybody out there. So that was really and truthfully the only reason we started looking in Lorena, was just because my association with the lodge.
Well, I like that though, because it gives you that home connection.
Yeah. And my dad actually lived in that area when they were growing up, and went to school out there. He moved from the farm into the city where we were raised. So all of my children now are going to the same school system that he went to. And
oh, cool.
So it's kind of cool. Just skipped a generation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess then the obviously you're a past master, but what was kind of your route to becoming master, and what offices have you held since being master of your lodge?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I was probably a Master Mason 2 years, and we had a waiting list at that point. We still do at my home lodge, and I had expressed some interest in maybe getting on the line, and that progressive line that we all berated a minute ago. And it asked the right questions, and then they stuck me in as junior steward. We had a guy drop out really before installation, so I got a promotion immediately to senior steward. So I got out a year early. Went through, served as master of in Benton Stanford 594, At the same time, or in the same period of time, I affiliated with a little lodge in Moody, Texas, which is also a little rural community outside of Waco, and started going through the chairs at that point. So I was master of that lodge, I want to say 2 years after I was master in Lorena. But I followed your standard model for good or bad. Asked the right questions. They stuck me in as steward and went through. Went to they were called the Warden's retreats at that point in time. So I got to go to both Warden's retreats, and had a really good group of guys in the same time frame going through ahead of me and behind me. So we were in a nice spot and learned a lot from them. So
Yeah, nowadays they call them officer leadership training sessions. So it's
Yeah.
OLT.
Yep. I still call it the Warden's retreat. I can't break that habit for whatever reason.
I notice a lot of people do.
Yeah. I like it. It's a retreat.
Yeah. And sometimes it is, especially because like at 148, rather than just go to Dallas, we usually pack up and go to Corpus Christi because it is a retreat for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lodges that take advantage of that. And I've seen that not just in Corpus, but I've seen Metroplex lodges go to Austin and vice versa, go to the Metroplex. So it's a good opportunity to get out and build that, do a little camaraderie weekend while your poor senior deacons over there learning and you're out having a good time. So.
Yeah, well, for us too, we go to Corpus because if our wives come, we're right there on the beach. So it works out for everybody.
That is the best. It's the last one, finishes up there, and it's the best one to go to. I tell people every year.
And there's almost always that Master Mason's degree on the battleship. So that's a cool.
That's a good weekend. That's a good Masonic weekend.
All right. So, Justin, what do you see as the biggest strength and weakness of our fraternity, and how do we improve?
Now that I'm in this office, I get the opportunity to be in contact with jurisdictions from all over the country and the world, and I have access to all the data, which is the big deal in Grandview. I started calling lodge secretaries right after I was elected, just introducing myself, telling them if anything they needed, call me, anything that we could do better, just an introductory call. And I was amazed at the number of lodge secretaries that were under 40 years old. That's some data points we're working on here. But I mean, the first 40 calls, I talked to a 25-year-old, a 28-year-old, a 32-year-old. So there are some youthful lodge secretaries out there, which I would have not guessed had there been a wager placed on it. We are retaining about 85 to 90% of Master Masons that we raise. We looked at that data the other day. Over the last 10 years, we just ran a report, and we're retaining at least 85 to 90%. I don't know if that's a good number or a bad number. We're trying to figure out how to compare that to data older than 10 years old. But to me, I was amazed. I thought that would have been far lower. So there's been some ups and downs. I think there's no arguing that. But it appears that some things that we've done here in the not too distant past are working and clicking with guys. There are lodges that are thriving, as y'all well know in your area, and mine as well. And there are lodges that are struggling and will continue to struggle. But I'm hopeful when I see the youthful leadership, the younger guys getting involved, and the fact that we're retaining so many of the Master Masons that we raise. Some jurisdictions, I think Ohio, they do the all the way in a day, or one of those jurisdictions where it's a 1 day and you're done kind of program. They will retain maybe half over the long term, is what I've been told. So for whatever it's worth, I think that the fact that we're retaining more is positive.
Yeah, that's absolutely good news too, because I know it seems like every event you go to, every lodge you talk to, it's how do we get members? And it's like, I believe truly in the idea that the best way to focus on membership is don't focus on membership, just focus on creating quality experiences. Yeah. And the membership will remain.
Well, and honestly, the 80 to 90% retention rate is stunning, right? I think one of the statistics that does get kind of quoted pretty often is that, like, and I know that this isn't necessarily related, right? but that your average lodge participation rate, at your average lodge meeting, what the Masonic Service Association of North America has found is that in any lodge in any jurisdiction, I think like either the median or the average, one of the two, attendance is going to be 15%,
Yeah.
at most. And it's kind of stunning, because if we have this 80 to 90% retention rate of Master Masons raised, which is awesome, where's that disconnect of raising 90% of guys, keeping 90% of raised guys, and then only 15% show up? So I'd
Yeah,
love
that's
to see
something
some more statistics there.
No, and I would as well. That's when Grandmaster Curry, when I went to his first conference where he discussed some of these numbers, that was something I had the back of my mind. It's, I don't know if this retention is so high because we're selling them a $500 endowment as soon as they join. I can't tell you if the 85 to 90% we're retaining served as worshipful master, maybe don't come back. There's some data we can get and some we can't. But there's, it's a positive. It's hopeful to me.
So, on a personal level, can you tell us or give us an example of how the fraternity has made you a better man?
Yeah, I mean, the standard things guys always mention. I mean, I was I still am not a very good public speaker. I can go ahead and put that out there. But I would just get physically ill. I would get up in front of people, and I remember doing my first master's lecture, and I was outside pacing in the parking lot like a crazy man, saying the lecture to myself in my head while the guys were having dinner, because I wanted to have it perfect. And I've done, a jillion of those now and conferred degrees, and every time I do one, I learn something and I get better. So as far as communicating with people in a large setting, it's helped me tremendously. When I joined the lodge, 2004, there a couple years I had taken a year off from Baylor, which turned into more than a year off from Baylor, and was already working for myself, had started businesses, so didn't really, I didn't need the piece of paper on the wall, but I was encouraged and threatened probably a little bit by a past master of our lodge who was a retired Air Force colonel, served in World War II. I'm a pilot as well, so me and this brother really clicked, and we'd go out there on Saturdays and just war stories and all kinds of good stuff. But he held me to account, and I went back and finished my degree, and in no small part because of his mentorship and constant nagging. And that has been beneficial to me later in life. And had I not done it at that point, I don't think I would have had the time to go back and do it later.
So that whispering good counsel.
Yeah, he was shouting it.
Before we actually dig into your role as Grand Secretary, though, you're also on the divan for Karam Shrine. And so I was wondering, what other appendant bodies are you a member of, and what roles do you play in those bodies?
So I'm a member of Waco Chapter and Council, Waco Commandery. I'm also a member of Robert Morris Elgin Council number 413, 412.
I'll have to look.
You're the recorder, Billy. Come on.
I know, I'm the recorder, and I'm going to have to look it up. It's so new, though, right?
It's in the fours. We didn't have a number when we joined, so we'll just go with that excuse. Some of the other invitational bodies I belong to, also, like I said, the divan at the shrine, Scottish Rite member, Waco Valley. Trying to think. I went through right after the master's degree. My grandfather was a very active Scottish Rite Mason, and we went to a couple of reunions, and he ran the sound room and we had an old series of cassette tapes that we would play at various points during the degrees. And so we worked that booth for many years. And then, he had that petition, he was waving at my face as soon as they got me up off the floor on the master's degree. Joined the shrine. Basically, I joined everything right out of the gate with the understanding that I would not have time to be active in all of them until later. So I've been on the books for a while in a lot of these organizations and been active as of recent.
Again, one thing I love about the appendant bodies is it gets you involved with a whole bunch of brothers outside your lodge, people that you wouldn't have met, that become good friends and good mentors, right?
Yeah.
Are there any mentors in particular that helped you on your way? And if so, how?
Yeah. So obviously we talked about the brother who was whispering that good counsel about going back and finishing. And I agree. That was Brother Dwayne Russell, who has since passed away. He was a 55-year member. So kind of a pillar of our lodge. Right Worshipful O'Neill was a member of my lodge in Lorena. When he moved to Waco, when he took the position as Grand Recorder of the Grand Royal Arch Chapter and whatever the other, I'm a loss for the title. But when he moved to Waco to take that position, he joined my lodge. So we struck up a friendship, which is why when I got this role as Grand Secretary, I was maybe a little more prepared than I would have ordinarily been. I spent a lot of time in the office. I would just come up here and hang out, walk around. I started getting little projects and tasks because I was always the kid that hung out at the office. So Orville would probably be my Masonic mentor that helped me the most for sure.
Well, and so bringing that up too, I know it was a surprise to probably yourself too when you were appointed as Grand Secretary by past Grandmaster Underwood during his year. So tell us about your thoughts about that, and was it something that you would ever aspired to be? And if not, then you obviously ran and were elected as Grand Secretary. So I guess could you walk us through how that came from, how it entered into your mind to continue that path?
Yeah. So I received a series of phone calls the week leading up to that from some of the other trustees, just kind of gauging interest. And then I got the call from Grandmaster Underwood asking if I would do it. And initially it was, sure, I'll do it on an interim basis. We'll make sure the bills get paid. We'll get through Grand Lodge, and then it's someone else's problem, truthfully. But on the second week I got in here and I went, hey, there's actually things that I can do in here and affect some positive change if I were able to be in here longer than from November 30th through the end of the session. So on that second week, I had made the decision that I would make myself available for it. Went back and thought about it as well. I mean, having been given the opportunity to serve in an interim basis, it was like a tryout, basically. Had it been a real train wreck, maybe I would have declined to make myself available. But I could see very early on there's plenty of challenges. We'll put it that way. There's plenty of things that needed to be done, and I just felt that I could put my little mark on it in some small way.
So, I guess, thinking about it, because we do work next door to each other. I know I get this question a lot. I'm probably sure you do too, about Grand Lodge. Is it, it's, yeah. I have this impression, this is me pretending to be, the Renner brother asking me, I have this impression that things are going badly and that we're losing money, and I'm very concerned about it. And they're surprised when I say, well, the building's not that bad. Yeah. It's in a lot better shape than a lot of our lodges. It just needs a little bit of TLC. And so do you have kind of the same perspective about the Grand Lodge of Texas, the craft, as I do with the actual physical structure?
Yeah, I know. A lot of guys have had the doom and gloom talk for so many years. I think it's just hard to get it out of their psyche. What better way to gain membership and keep your members involved than telling them everything you're doing badly and how bad it's going to be in the future. I think we have more things to be proud about than things that need fixing. The building is magnificent.
Horrible. Now please support us.
Yeah, exactly. This is a magnificent building. I mean, there are very few grand jurisdictions in even our country that have their own building. A lot of them meet in offices, and that's just the fraternity is shrinking. There's no getting around that. Whatever number we end up with, wherever we find the bottom to be, it's our job on my end and your job on your end over there to figure out how to make it work in this building. I think we should be proud of the building. On the fraternal side, of course, there are. I get probably the same guy that calls you. As soon as he hangs up with you, he calls over here. There are things that people are have very strong opinions about. We'll just say that. But I mean, there's more things to be happy about than there are to be sad about in this office. There's so much potential I see. So many things that even in the short term we've been able to fix, change, and modernize, and going forward will be even better. But and I find that people have different phone calls with different people. I get brothers who call and talk to the office staff in one tone, and then when I say put them on hold, let me talk to them, it just totally changes. I don't know what that is, but yeah, I've had I can count on one hand the amount of just truly irate phone calls I've received. And being in the restaurant business, I mean, the customer business analogy kind of works. I want to make sure everybody's well taken care of and happy. We dropped the ball a couple times. We're going to pick it up and fix it and move on. But I look at it on a customer service basis that the office is doing far better than it has in the past.
So in speaking of the Grand Secretary's office, you are actually in the Grand Secretary's office right now.
I am present after hours without permission. Yes, sir.
So,
Perfect.
yeah, just make sure you set the alarm when you leave.
Yes. And it's dark and scary outside, so it's going to be an exciting run to the truck.
I love it. So one of the things that you mentioned was that, you know, you were appointed, and during your term of appointment, you realized, hey, you know, there's this stuff that I could make a real difference about if I had a little more time, right? If you can, what are some of the things that you picked up on that you said, hey, I can make a difference here? And of those things, are you still working on those things, or have you kind of shifted focus to other ideas? Basically, what big projects attracted your attention, and what big projects are you still working on?
Yeah. So just little things in the short term. It seemed to be very difficult getting this office to complete paperwork for the various folks that needed it. We had some lawyers in New York that were anticipating some documents from this office for a couple of years that were able to get wrapped up in a time frame of about a week. Just little things like that. And when I look at things and they haven't been accomplished, it just irritates me. And there were reasons for all these, whatever they were. But we were able to get all of the things that were out there hanging over the office's head forever accomplished very quickly. Long-term projects. So there are lodges that have very strong secretaries that have been doing the job for many years. They've gone from typewriters to word processors to desktop computers through 2 or 3 different database variants, and have kept up the whole way. There are lodges that have secretaries who are newer to the job in varying ages, and that don't have any familiarity with Grandview and how to do it. So I told the staff very early on that we're to take care of the lodges and to help the lodge secretaries any way we can. We would love for them to communicate electronically with us. If they can't, for whatever reason, what's the barrier between us and them and getting it accomplished? Annual returns, just various forms that you have to submit, being able to get them done in any way, whether that's through an email, through a phone call, through a face-to-face meeting. The 2 or 3 things we've done very quickly, and I got them wrapped up, I think, last week. All of the lodge forms the secretaries use on a routine basis are available to download on the database right now. Most of them were on there before. There were a few that were not available unless you purchased them. The Grand Lodge still has paper forms and inventory. If you're a lodge secretary and you want to continue to use paper, we have them available. If you're a lodge secretary and you want to use an email and a fillable PDF, those are now available. All the forms that were updated they're in the process of being all converted to fillable PDFs. All the routine ones are ready that way. So you can, if you're a lodge secretary, download, fill it out, attach it as an email, and send it. There are a number of other forms we're in the process of updating. We get receipts in this office routinely from certificates of good standing and a couple other just kind of day-to-day transactional forms, which if you do it digitally, you don't need to waste the time to fill the thing out in triplicate, put it in an envelope, put my name on it, and put a stamp on it. The Grandview's already accomplished it. It's redundant. So that's what we're looking at now, is trying to eliminate as much of the redundant paper processes as we can, while still maintaining the ability to serve that lodge secretary who wants to use the old school method. I've got an Underwood typewriter. If you want to use that, do it. That's my opinion.
And it's like I've had people push back on digital payment and stuff like that for forever, and once you actually show folks how easy it is to use, they're like, oh wow, this is great. And it's like, yeah, that's the whole idea.
So you talk about long-term goals, objectives in the office. We've got the ability to ACH funds directly to the lodge now. We've set that up. If your lodge wants to receive your endowed membership disbursement, basically the second day after we authorize it, we're going to have a form that's available. We'll put it out in the secretary's communication probably in April. So we'll announce that, but we'll have a form available. And if your lodge, once again, you don't have to do it. If you're that brother who just does not want to go the digital route, we'll still mail you a check. But if you want your money ACH, don't have to mess with taking it to the bank. That capability exists already. And we're going to roll that out, like I said, to the lodges. And that would be for everything. And truthfully, if you want to ACH your annual return money back, we'd be delightful if you do that. It'd save us the hassle of having to process the check. So that's something that we're in the process of rolling out. You talked about digital payments. Does your lodge accept digital payments for dues?
We do, yes.
Okay. So Grandview has the capability they've developed here in the last 12 months for the lodges to accept dues through Grandview and accept credit card payments as dues, for dues. Accept dues on a monthly basis. So whatever you are divided by 12, it'll automatically debit from the brother's account or charge his credit card. So Grandview has that capability now, and I would expect announcement from the Grand Lodge of Texas in the next couple of months on that project.
That is awesome.
What is something you would recommend for grand jurisdictions that are looking to move towards Grandview?
So I actually spoke to the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Nevada last week, I think on Thursday, and just on a general membership inquiry, and we started the conversation of database, and he had just switched over to Grandview, and we were talking about pros and cons and things that could be better. I can't tell you how many jurisdictions are using a database and are not. My guess is at least the Grand Lodge jurisdictions in the United States are using a database of some form or fashion. Even a jurisdiction with a couple, 5,000, 10,000 members, you have to have some sort of database system. Grandview has been wonderful. It was not implemented in our jurisdiction, probably to its fullest capability. And that's one of those, going back to things we can fix in long-term projects, is that's something we do every Tuesday. I have a standing call with Jeff Clark, who owns Grandview, and we address issues we have. One of the complaints I got one of those first weeks in the office was, well, Grandview doesn't do this, and this doesn't work right. And so I said, just make a list, and then we'll start working on it, line one to the end. And they've been very receptive. I've had a very positive relationship with Jeff Clark and everybody at Grandview since I showed up in this office. So it's been wonderful. If your jurisdiction is not using a database system, I think you need to. Grandview is probably the most widely adopted system for Grand Lodges. They kept their customer list pretty secret for a while. And one of our conversations with Jeff last week, week before, is they're going to release a map with all the states shaded blue where they are integrated. And I think it's at least 20 or 30 by now. On our end, it's much easier communicating with other jurisdictions that use Grandview. The process for an out-of-state affiliation and any communication out-of-state obviously goes through the Grand Secretary's office to the other Grand jurisdictions, Grand Secretary's office. When you have Grandview, they're not linked, but it's a matter of a couple of keystrokes and you're done. So if your jurisdiction is not using it, I think you need to look at a database system. Grandview has worked well for us up to this point. Obviously, we talked about the ability to take payments that integration exists. It's a matter of if your jurisdiction wants to utilize it or not. But that could be used for any number of other things, tickets to Grandmasters banquets, tickets to statewide events, the email communication capability within Grandview. If your lodge doesn't want to maintain its own email list, as long as you have your updated emails in Grandview for your members, then you can communicate as a lodge secretary through Grandview. So it is beneficial for communication for sure. No matter what database system you go with, you need to be able to communicate with your members.
All right. So, Justin, if you wouldn't mind, give us a rundown of what your average day is like as Grand Secretary.
There has not been an average day yet, and no two have been the same, as best I can figure. So in my professional life as a restaurateur, you go in, and my dad used to always say this, I'd show up, I'd work all day, and I didn't know what I did, but I worked all day. You're always just doing something. And one of those first 2 or 3 days here, I said, man, this is like the restaurant. I come in, there are days when I would just work. I'd be on the phone, on emails, just back and forth. And you get to the end of the day and you go, I don't think I accomplished anything, but it's 4 o'clock and I've got to go home. So the average day is, we're checking with the staff to see what the progress is on some of these projects that we're working on. Some of these ongoing improvement type things, and some just routine. We're in the process of mailing out all the esoteric certificates now. And I promised the deadline at the end of March. And so I'm making sure that we make that deadline. The processing of endowed membership. So there's just a kind of a recap. We try to do that at least a couple times a week. And then you just basically it's fielding phone calls and returning emails. I was able to talk to the Grand Chancellor of the United Grand Lodge of England the other day on the phone. So it's just, like I said, no 2 days are alike, and every one of them's been exciting.
So is there anything that surprised you about the role? And I know, like you said, that every day is a different challenge, sometimes in a good way. And so is there anything that really took you by surprise?
So I knew it was going to be a job. I knew it was going to be a project. I knew that there were some things that towards the end of Orville's tenure, because of his health, he wasn't able to attend to. So I knew there'd be some catching up. I was not prepared for the level of catching up that I've been involved with. So, and a lot of those projects are coming to an end, and we're in early March. So I anticipate, another 2-3 months we'll have most of those catch-up kind of things done. But I wasn't prepared for that. The communication with various lawyers. I've talked to more lawyers than I ever have in my business career. So we have a general counsel, obviously, who's the chairman of the Civil Law Committee, which this year it's Brother Chris Livingston. We communicate weekly via email. Sometimes I'll just call him. Any real estate transaction that a lodge wants to take care of has to come through the office so the Grandmaster can approve or disapprove. There's a lot of those. I was really, truly surprised. The Grand Lodge owns a lot of demised lodge property, which was surprising. If your lodge merges, obviously the lodge you merge into is a beneficiary of any funds you had and any real estate that you owned. If your lodge demises, then it becomes property of the Grand Lodge. And so I was getting exemption certificates from various counties all up throughout the state for property that we owned. So that's another long ongoing project. Is we're trying to determine exactly what we own, where it is, if it's a building, is it in safe condition? If it's not, what do we do to remedy it? If we own property, can we sell it? So I was unaware of the amount of real estate transactions that would be involved. And then obviously you get I deal with a lot of the disciplinary items. And I say deal with, I'm a lot of the charges and forms get filed here, and then I forward them up to the Grandmaster, and then we deal with them at this back in the office. And so you some of those are a little disheartening, but part of the job is some of these guys that need to be shown the door. We at least get to finish that process here and make sure that they're no longer a Mason.
So, all right. So moving on to better things.
Moving on, changing subjects to something more lighthearted.
All right. So on this one, Oh, this was that kind of loaded question, and however you want to approach it. So,
Oh yeah.
has being Grand Secretary and peering behind the curtain changed your outlook on Masonry?
No, and I've thought about that since we got on the call. So obviously, having the ability to have a 2-week tryout gave me an opportunity to see kind of what was going on to some extent. I didn't run then, and then like we talked about earlier, finding these little hopeful tidbits. The fact that we're retaining a higher percentage of guys that I would not have guessed that number. The fact that I'm seeing so many younger guys take more active roles. At this level, you're going to deal with negative things no matter what. But I think on the whole, there's more things to be positive and hopeful about than there are to be negative about.
All right, very good. And then the last one kind of leads us into the quote of the week, but and you get to work with all the leaders in Texas Freemasonry, right? Past and present, and even those that are coming up. And so the question that I have for you is, what do you feel constitutes a good leader? What are the leadership qualities that you think someone who's interested in moving up, or even maintaining their current position, what do you think they should emulate?
Yeah, I mean the basic being a relatively good communicator, being well organized, obviously I think are prerequisites for a lot of those positions, especially even at the lodge level. If you're going to be the master of a lodge that has 100 members, that has 500 members, whatever you might have, you're going to have to be somewhat organized to make sure that you're able to accomplish whatever goals you had. The biggest thing I see is, and I've seen it at the dive end level, we get together a couple times a year, all the dive ends and all the shrine temples for TSA, and then we have a dive end midwinter. So I get to communicate with those guys from all over. If anybody who wants to do this, you need to take the approach that you're a servant. There is no anointed position. I mean, these guys that make themselves available for Grand Junior Warden and work through that line, I think by the time you get to be Grand Master, you've got some full understanding of the magnitude of the job, and you have to be in it for the right reasons, and you have to approach it as a servant. You're there to serve the membership in whatever capacity, and that's held true in this office. Literally every time I've had conversations with guys, I'm here to help you. What do you need? This is not about me. I have beliefs, I have opinions on the way I want to have things done, but at the end of the day, I'm here to help and provide a service to these guys.
Right, Worshipful Grand Secretary, thank you so much for the fantastic conversation. I'm lucky I get to work next to you. We have these types of conversations all the time. So the quote of the week this week is from John Maxwell, and since we just talked about leadership, it's from the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And it is, true leadership cannot be awarded, appointed, or assigned. It comes only from influence, and that cannot be mandated. It must be earned. The only thing a title can buy is a little time, either to increase your level of influence with others or to undermine it.
Ooh, that last part, or to undermine it.
Yep.
That's a key there. So, folks, if you want to learn more about us, you can reach us at www.fortworth148.org. Our handle on Facebook is at Fort Worth Lodge 148, and you can email us info148@fortworth148.org. This year, 21, we will we'll not be having a Masonicon in 21, but we have already started the planning process for Masonicon 2022, and we want to try and catch up and make up for the loss of the pandemic losses of previous Masonicons, and do some overtime. So look forwards to that. And eventually, when that time comes, you'll be able to learn more at texasmasonicon.com.
That's right. Bring your child, because we're going to be rebuilding.
Exactly.
All right. So this was fantastic. Again, thank you, Brother Grand Secretary. And this is Billy Hamilton signing off.
This is Gabe Jagush signing off.
This is Just a Duty signing off.